G'day everyone and welcome back for Talking Siege episode 69. We have a very special guest today, all the way from Singapore, dialing in to talk to us about the recent finals. Yep, that's you. That's Glenn, aka Lunarmetal from Aerowolf, joining, of course, Sky and Cthulhu. Glenn, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Spent the whole day studying. I'm feeling revitalized.
Good.
Knowledge is at its peak level.
Good, that's what I like to hear. Well, we're going to be digging into everything Tokoname and everything Aerowolf, and obviously having a deep dive into your history personally, Glenn, and talking a lot about your history. But we'll get to that in a little bit. First up, Cthulhu's going to take us through a lot of stuff that's come through announcements to do with shifting tides and the technical test service. So, Cthulhu, hit us.
Yes, so finally we were blessed with the patch notes that are coming out. The big ones that were mentioned initially, even during the presentation panel, were the limb penetration and the repel exit. So finally, when you flash somebody with a flashbang or the Yin Candela, you can actually kill them through the hand.
Hmm.
And the same applies to repel exit. That now you have a little bit more freedom, and when do you want to actually fold over?
Yeah.
We also have a couple of extra things on the balancing side. Boss G ACOG finally arrived with all the memes that were ensued. And a few buffs to Kavera's M12 SMG. Glass is getting a little bit of a tweak to his scope, which I'm actually quite keen. And then the few big ones being the Kaid Electroclaw radius nearly twice has been increased from 0.75 meters to 1.3, which actually will be able to cover all three patches of the wall. And as well as that, Wharton is getting a C4 instead of a barbed wire, so he'll be a bit more flexible now that he's also a two-speed operator. But there's plenty more, ladies and gentlemen. There's heaps more to actually witness. So for that, you can actually visit the subreddit r/Rainbow Six TTS, and you'll be able to find all of the freshest patch notes there and be able to delve in all the technicality of the current TTS service status. But we also have another announcement that has been made with the finals at Tokonami, which is the pilot program, Phase 2, Wave 2, and this time it's just the weapon skins that are coming out. Dev, I believe we have a picture for that to showcase as well. And so this time, what was I believe also mentioned is that teams were actually allowed to pick the weapons, and funnily enough, Team Empire picked the R4C to commemorate the Russian cyborg, aka Joystick. And there are a fair few actually really nice looking skins, and for example, the G2 SMG11 as well, which would allow you to complete the whole G2 sledge skin package if you would like. But yeah, you can now acquire them already in the game and go crazy with them. Honestly, I'm probably will be busting my whole wallet to acquire probably most of them, really. But yeah, that's pretty much about it on the official news. But now we get to actually dive into the nitty gritty. Glenn, first of all, for those who don't really know and don't really follow the Southeast Asian Pro League, why don't you introduce to the viewers?
Um, I think we're probably the oldest team. At this point, Yasira and myself were in the first Six Invitational in 2017. Since then, we haven't really made a comeback onto a Pro League finals or major event until this past LAN. Um, yeah, this team has had a lot of history, a lot of ups and downs. We've only just, I would say, we've only just found a good way we want to play this game, and now we're losing a player. So yeah, I guess that sums up our story pretty nicely. It's just
Yeah,
misfortune one after another.
yeah. I mean, it's been still a pretty wild ride that you guys had so far, even throughout the several APAC Pro League seasons,
Yep.
being battling with Xavier, who had a pretty much of a Cinderella story leading up to a fair few APAC LAN finals, and now you managed to, within the recent ones, make a pretty big upset. Honestly, beating Fnatic and Nora as well
Mhm.
with some quite some finesse. So, kind of give us a rundown on like how did the Aerowolf come to be to its current state, say, that led to the Tokonami finals?
So I think pretty much everyone has been really vocal about how bad the single alien bracket is, and
Hmm.
I think for once we're on the receiving end, like on the winning side of this misfortune. Um, I think part of it is if it was, I don't think we would have made it this far um in Tokonami if everything wasn't just a single bracket. So because if you think about it, right, how far we went in Japan, we only won 3 best of 3s and that's it. And suddenly we achieved that top 4 placing. Um, so while we did benefit out of it, I mean the biggest benefit is that we didn't really have to prepare for all the teams. You know, we knew exactly who we were gonna face plenty of time before that. So even in our prep, it's not just about the counter strat. It's not just about the analyst work. Even the scrims that we knew kind of what maps we were gonna play. Like for example, I mentioned against Fanatics, I knew a lot of the maps that we were gonna play. So we literally just scrimmed those 3 or 4 maps instead of all the 7 maps. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So this is only possible because of that single alien bracket.
Yeah, single limb bracket has
Yeah.
been a bit of a odd discussion in that regard. What was going through your and the team's head when you were going into what could have been pretty much the last land before kind of a chunk of the team actually just leaves the roster, well, due to all the personal commitments that you mentioned in the tweets prior to the LAN?
Honestly, nothing much was going through our heads. It's just one of those, we got Fnatic again, surprise, so let's just play our hearts out. Yeah, if you compare it, I guess in a way we've matured. Yeah, because if you compare to the first few times when we got Fnatic again and again, we were like, all of us were actually kind of depressed for at least like a day or two. We were like, how, like, no matter what seed we get, first seed, second seed, we always seem to be pulled back to play against Fnatic. And we used to be so down about it. Like, we'd be like, oh man, who has been doing some bad things? Why is our karma point so low? You know, whose fault is this? Probably Adrian's, but you know, we don't know. But this time it was just like, okay, we got Fnatic. We almost beat them last time, so let's actually make it a big one. You know, if
Hmm.
we lose, we go down fighting, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it actually worked out for the better, I guess.
It,
Like
it,
having
sou-
that kind of mentality.
it sounds like a major attitude change between like this APAC finals and the global finals and previous events. Was there anything particular that you thought happened that made that happen? Obviously, you had Speakeasy brought in, but that was quite some time ago. Is there any particular thing that you think happened that really turned the new leaf for you guys?
Um, well, I think those are two separate things to talk about, right? First is like the mental issue is one thing, and the second thing is like getting players to be fully ready for a high stakes game. So let's talk about the mental thing first. I think the big reason why mentality has been such an issue for us is um oddly enough the way my team, the dynamics in my team is very weird. It's unlike any other team. So for example, you frequently go to advice for some of the other pro players, and like you ask their coaches like how do you maintain a good mentality, you know, and they'll tell you stuff like, oh, be confident, just think you're the best team there, and you know, you'll execute that way if you think that way. That wasn't how it worked for us. Expectations actually killed us. So a lot of the times when we went in like being the semi favorite to win the whole event, it just doesn't do well for us. So I scrapped everything that I learned from other people or even like books and whatever motivational thing that you can find, and just decided to find our own style of doing it. And sometimes that means being not so confident in yourself, doubting your every move, and knowing that you're gonna throw rounds because that's how your team is playing. You know, we are so famous for throwing. It's come to the point where when we throw, it's just like another day in scrims. You know, you don't take anything of it. Oh, we were up 5-0 against Fnatic, and then suddenly it's 5-5. Doesn't matter. Let's play the next round. That kind of thing.
Hmm.
And it's I think that's probably one of the biggest achievements in terms of mentality. Like being able to play like that. It's not something that any team, even the most experienced teams, can do. But yeah, so that's the mental issue. The second one would be like getting pro players ready for pro league, right? Because in especially in SEA, any new player I get would be relatively inexperienced. It's very different from, let's say, if you play in the NA or EU, where you pick up a new player and they have some form of pro league experience. Most of the time, that's not the case in SCA. Like even if they do, they still lack a lot of the foundational stuff, like good habits and stuff like that. So it usually takes, I mean, probably like 6 to 9 months before they are actually like the team can function at its peak. Because for a team to function at its peak, it's not just the new player that needs to acclimatize, right? It's like everyone needs to gel together well and like get used to each other's habits. So I think like that's part of the reason why it took so long.
Hmm. Would,
So yeah, especially for like our new player Jordan, it's probably gonna take him like the same amount of time, or maybe shorter if I can help it, like to try and get acclimatized to high stakes games like Speakeasy did.
would you say that with the whole mentality change, was it something similar to just going into the APAC line with kind of the attitude that there wasn't really that much to be lost, or was it just in general you would just chill? You knew how Fnatic were playing, you would just play your game.
Um, I think bottom line is just not overthinking things.
Okay.
So yeah, usually when you have high expectations, it's because like you think about the what ifs. Like let's say we win, what do we do next? Like we wanna, I don't know, like look for new orgs, get a raise, like negotiate all this kind of thing. You just get carried away. So
Mm.
really, the most important thing I think is just not overthink. And even when it comes to Fnatic, it's like they are good, but they're beatable team, I guess. Again,
Mm.
it's just not overthinking. Treat Fnatic like you would any other team, and
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I guess that kind of moves us to the performance that led to the Tokonami finals. Dev, why don't you run us through some of that?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a lot before about how you don't want to treat Fnatic like this intimidating thing. Treat it like any other opponent. Was it kind of the same mentality going into a global event? Because you've played a couple of games against some of these teams before, but I mean, a lot of people regard their teams from Europe, especially, to be kind of that tier above. What kind of a mentality did you have going into that versus something more like an APAC event?
I think like any other team stepping to the international stage for the first time, one of the things that I was kind of worried but not so worried, was the fact that the meta was so different. Because all we've ever done is scrim APAC teams. So like going into Giants, we had no idea. They might be like 10 times better fraggers than us. They might have 10 times better strats than us, and it's kind of hard to tell just by watching VODs alone. Um, but again, if we start to think that way, then that's the fallacy of doing what we say not to do, which is not to overthink. Um, I think the fact that we can have such a good performance against Fnatic, especially considering Fnatic to be one of the best teams in the world right now, it doesn't really, it's just not to overcomplicate things, I guess. Because if you think about the conditions that we were playing at, it's like um the amount of time they put in, or the amount of resources they have. If you go by that logic, then you're never gonna take a game out of them, because you just give up before you even start to play. But it's really just not overthinking it, I guess. Um, I trusted that the game was going to be hard. I trusted that Giants was going to be really strong, but that should not affect the way you prep for the games or how you even play the games at all. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you what were your expectations going into Giants and the finals, but because you said that you're not really overthinking it, maybe it's not so much something you're thinking about. You're not thinking about your expectations. You're just kind of taking it that one step at a time. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like the conversation, basically, like the conversation on the lift, like on the way down to the lobby during the event, goes something like this. So someone will be like, "Oh, we might just get 0-2 by Giants," and then someone else will say, "Oh, but we might actually 2-0 Giants." So either way, you can think about it however you like. It in the end, as long as it doesn't affect you, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, anything can happen. It's very difficult to predict even when you watch VODs.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on that preparation that you guys do before matches, because you mentioned it when we were talking in the context of Fnatic before, how you only had to scrim 3 maps because you knew pretty much for sure what was going to happen. What does your preparation look like, especially going into Tokoname, where, as you said, you don't have experience scrimming teams from Europe or North America? What's the actual preparation look like for you and the rest of the players on your team?
Um, well, let's talk about the thing I do first. Like the thing I try to do as soon as possible is to try and figure out what maps the other team likes to play. And based on that, you also take into account whether they are the type of team who will change their strats on the fly, or will they like stick to the same thing again and again. So where you move forward from that depends on what you decide in the first place, right? So for Giants, like you could see some form of for Giants, they had a 7 map pool. For example, Clubhouse, they only played Clubhouse against Empire because they were confident in counter-strateging Clubhouse. Counter-strateging Empire on Clubhouse. So if it like based on that, it could either go one of two ways. If they did not ban Clubhouse in the first ban, means they have something prepped for Clubhouse, that kind of thing. So for me, it's just trying to figure out the mentality behind how they would want to ban. That's the first part. The second part is kind of like figuring out what their strong maps are, because as a team with a smaller map pool, you gotta take them on one of their comfort maps. You don't have a choice about it. So the biggest thing in drafting is to guess as accurately as possible what their first pick is gonna be. So for example, I had it pegged as either coastline or something they would throw at us, which is cafe. So a lot of the prep was just on these two maps. We scrimmed a lot on these two maps. Um, and even in the scrims, we were banning how we would ban against Giants, regardless of who we were facing.
Mm.
So let's say we play a team that doesn't play Tokebi, and we know that Giants play Tokebi a lot, right? Doesn't matter, ban it, even though we know they're not gonna use it. It's all about getting used to playing in the environment you would at LAN, right? But this way of preparation also has a lot of drawbacks. Like I said, it's only possible because of that single alien bracket. So we knew who we were gonna face, and like if we made it to top 4, then that's great. But it's so resource and time consuming that um we would not be able to win a championship with prep like that unless we were all full time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess it sounds like you put a lot of investment into your chances of beating X team is how much time you can spend specifically prepping for that team, which is interesting to me because it sounds like there's been a bit of a contrast because I've talked to a lot of teams recently and I've seen a lot of interviews where teams are saying, look, we stopped focusing on the other teams, we just started focusing about fixing ourselves. And it sounds like what you're saying is quite different to that. Can you explain kind of like the thought process behind that and what does it actually mean? Like when you prepare for a team, how does that actually translate to you having a better chance of beating them?
So fundamentally, as any team, you would want to it makes logical sense for you to raise your own skill level up to a certain level, and then you kind of redivert your resources based on who you're playing. Um, you know what I mean? So it's like a lot of the team's focus is to actually get to fundamentally as high a level as possible. Um, but the only reason why we do things different, we did that in the past. Like we would say things like, "Yo, let's not be forced to ban Echo because some teams might play Echo, some teams don't know how to play Echo, that kind of thing. So let's not keep banning Echo because we won't improve as much if we keep banning the same operator." That was how we thought in the past, and like that subject of having fluid bans is something that Fnatic does all the time. They they are confident in so many of their operator pools that they don't really it doesn't really matter to them what they ban, so they just want to ban the highest value target of whoever they're facing. Um, but it doesn't really work for us because again, limited time, limited resources. For me. I value being adjusted to the setting of like which team you're gonna face a lot higher than like individual prep, because foundationally my team is great. We're already there. We spent 6 to 9 months. We're already at a decent level, but what we would lose out on is the prep, or if people throw curveballs at us. So like since we know that's the issue, we we throw a curveball back at them first, like with the Jaeger bands and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very different. I think the very fact that we are one of the only remaining part-time team forces us to play like that, to prep like that. I guess it's all about making the best use of your time. Yeah. I mean, logically, if we were all a full-time team, then that would probably be my approach as well.
Mm.
It's to like try and not think so much about all the other teams and make sure that you can play every single style, so that you can change your style depending on who you're facing, right?
Yeah, and it really says something about the APAC region that our current APAC champions and the team that has progressed the furthest most recently is a team that isn't even full time. That's yourselves, and we only have a very small number of teams within APAC that actually are full time. So maybe we can touch on a little bit later about kind of what it's like to play in a part-time team and your goals looking into the future. But I wanted to know, since you talked so much about the preparation, what in your opinion, like, what went right and what went wrong when you were playing against the Giants and when you were playing against Darkseer as well? What were the things where you said, no, we did that well and that worked against them, or what were the things where you saw and you said that didn't work well?
That's a lot to recall. To be honest, I don't really remember everything that happened. I haven't really like watched the VOD of it. So I'm answering this based on memory. I think one of the famous moments was that whole trade thing on Coastline, where everybody died within a minute. So like that's one of the things that went right, because one of our weaknesses on Coastline, and we saw it apparent in every team we scrim, is like every good team on Coastline, including Fnatic, who was our primary scrim partner, they had a much better play style when it comes to playing together and refragging. So whereas for us, it's for us, when we try to do that, it was like in scrims, it was a lot of solo plays, like maybe Jeremy or Martin making single moves to try and win the round. It might win us the round, but it's too high risk. So then this was largely Adrian's influence, where he kind of got fed up at the way we played Coastline. So he just started forcing everyone to play together in pairs. Like, you're not allowed to make moves by yourself anymore. So that's kind of what happened against Giants, right? If you looked at us, I think Adrian and Pat were making a move on one side of the map, and me and Jeremy were making our own move on the other side of the map. So it just so happens that, like, while we're trying to put ourselves in position to make moves, like, we were gonna aggress on them, they aggressed on us first, and that's when, like, I guess two speeding trains colliding into each other, and just everyone just like were in the right place at the right time. Yeah, that's for Coastline. So for Villa was pretty close. I think we won it 8-7. It was like down to the last round. And to be honest, Villa was the one map I thought we could take a lot more convincingly. So even though we still won that map, we made a lot of foundational mistakes. So for example, Villa is one of those maps where as a defender, if you use the setup and you set up crossfires, you most likely be able to win your rounds. So a lot of our strategy is to just buy time on the opposite side of the map and then fall back, right? But we made a lot of mistakes, and we kept getting caught off before we can use our setup. Sometimes it was me, sometimes it was other people. But yeah, we knew that if, like, no matter what happens, just use the setup. You'll win. So it depends on maps also, right? So there are some maps where you have to use your setup to win, and there are other maps where you have to make a play to win. So like Coastline and Villa are two opposite examples. Coastline, on defense, like, because foundationally we weren't very strong on Coastline defense, so we needed to make a play on those maps in order to win, and that's what we did. For Villa, it was more about not making so many plays and just toning it down and using the setup.
Okay.
Yeah, so we didn't do that very well, even though we still won the game.
Yeah, I've been rewatching some of the VODs today. I only just started your one, but I was mostly rewatching the Wildcard one, and I noticed that it seems like a lot of the opposing teams didn't expect the APAC teams to come out of the gate so aggressive and so confident. And I think that the mentality that you mentioned before about just not caring who you're versing, just playing your game, I think that definitely shone through for you guys and Wildcard as well. So I want to know, with that mentality in your heads, thinking this is just another game, what was it like returning to a global stage where you've been before for the Six Invitational 2017 and more recently at the Allied Esports Minor, but this time you're in front of 4,000 Japanese fans who have this applause that I've honestly never seen an esports crowd quite like it, aside from one other thing. But like, what was that like for the team, and having all these new fans and signing sessions? What was that like for you guys?
Oh, well, let me just one at a time. So, the fans were great. I'll leave that to the end. So the first question you had was like mentality, right? Like us and Wildcard. I think we were backstage when the Wildcard game was going on against Navi, and I remember saying it to someone on my team that, all those Apex lands that we both lost actually helped us a lot right now. Because I think both of us fundamentally we understood what it takes to play at a LAN and what's at stake. Like we went through so many emotional roller coasters from
Hmm.
mostly losing LANs. So like, and I couldn't really, I don't know what's going on in the mentality of Giants or Navi, and I can only make this assumption based on the VODs that I've watched of them, and I could kind of tell that mentality wise, us and Wildcard probably had the upper hand in terms of LAN experience. Well, I don't want to accredit it to just LAN experience because Giants has a lot of LAN experience. Navi maybe not so much, but um I don't think it's just the experience of being at a LAN. It's more about knowing what it's like to to lose everything at a LAN event. I think I mean I said it I think I phrased that badly, but I think you kind of know what I'm going with, I guess. It's
Hmm.
like when you play and when you think about everything you have to lose, you just can't function that way. And I think us and Wildcard have that figured out very well. That's the only reason why we could perform the way we did. Like, and I think I tell this to most people. I can't speak for Wildcard, but for us, I really don't think that we are the better team over Giants or Fnatic for that matter. But the better team does not win LAN events. Like
Hmm.
the team who performs on the day wins LAN events. And if mentality is something you struggle with, then you pay the price, I guess. Yeah. And the
So
next question was,
yeah, about
sorry, yeah,
that.
go
What
ahead.
was it? What was it like having like that crowd, that energy, and all the fans coming up to you after the game? I took a photo of you guys when you had
Mm.
a couple hundred fans lined up. Like, do you remember that? That was
It's
crazy.
I remember that, and it's surreal, and I'm so amazed by how welcoming they were. They're just the best fans from anywhere, I think. And not saying that as if we had a lot of fans in the first place. We had like 3 people cheering for us in Sydney. And if you're watching, you guys are awesome, by the way. Uh, yeah, it's just such a change. Like you juxtapose. Sorry, you compare this to what happened the last time we were at Tokyo, and like every kill we got was met with silence, and every kill Norango got was met with like loud applause. We could hear it through the headsets. But this time it's just the opposite. I think the fans were cheering for both teams still, but we could kind of tell they were cheering for us more than the other team, and it feels great, man. I love the Japanese fans. I've actually never been so motivated to learn Japanese until now. So I actually I just finished bidding for the modules for my next semester, right? And immediately I paid like a lot of credits for Japanese. I just wanna have my shot at trying to learn that language. I just love the country so much. I love the people, I love the fans, everything.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people said that coming out of the event. A lot of people saying, "Hey, I could move back here." Um,
Yeah.
so so now that you've had that amazing experience where you guys really performed to the best of your ability and you're moving forward into the future, there's a lot to talk about. Sky, I think is going to take us through a lot of the things that we wanted to touch on. Where do you want to start, Sky?
Yeah, so I guess probably, obviously you guys just were at Turkanami, just discussed that you obviously had an amazing win against Giants. Um, I guess now sort of we're looking at after Tokonami, and I guess sort of the immediate thing that hits is obviously Mentalist, who is one of the star players on the team is departing, and unfortunately will no longer be on Aerowolf. I guess I just wanted to know, what sort of does this mean for the team going forward? Are there any specific sort of adaptations that you're looking to make? Yeah, just sort of like what's the mindset going through that?
Um. So like looking on the bright side of what happened, this wasn't a surprise for us, right? We knew that it was coming from a long time ago, so we did have some time to prep for it. Um, I can't say the same for other roster changes we've made in the past. Like in the past, it was a lot more like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? But right now, we've taken several steps to to deal with it, and I think Jordan is one of them. Jordan and Histor, which is Joe. I think some of you might have met him in Tokonami, but most people we haven't made an announcement about him, but it will come soon. Basically, between Jordan and Joe, either one of them will probably fill up Pat's shoes. I haven't decided which. It all depends on um who can get acclimatized better by the Six Invitational. Actually, that being said, I the good thing about having a 6-man roster right now is I want to decide which 5 is playing as soon as possible, and that doesn't just mean like one of the 2 of them. I think that even for the other players like me, Jeremy, Adrian, if somehow the team fits better dynamic wise, they would need both Joe and Jordan to play. Then basically the worst dynamically would have been the one stepping out. I'm doing a terrible job at explaining this situation. So basically, we have 6 players. The best 5 plays. If the best 5 fits well dynamically. So for example, like if my individual skill is not up to par, which is the main honestly the main worry for most of them is that my individual skill is lacking. So let's say it doesn't improve by 6 invitational and it's better for the other 5 to play, then I'll come in as a coach. So it doesn't mean that even though both Jordan and Joe are coming in as the newest members, it doesn't mean that they have no chance of playing, or that we're gonna shuffle our roster based on seniority or anything like that. It's the best 5 plays. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I guess that's a really interesting way to look at it. And I think it's pretty awesome that you're so open and honest about I guess just like just so humble about I guess where you sit in the team, and I guess willing to make those changes. And even willing to sacrifice your spot if necessary to sort of step back and let some of these other players play. If
I
that's what makes no sense.
I don't think humble is the I don't know. It's not I don't think I'm humble at all. It's like I still want to play, definitely. I like for the next 10 years I want to do things that I won't be able to do when I get older. Things like people in esports talk about like making money or getting fame. For me, I just want to build a team that can win as much as possible. So whatever my contribution is, whether it's as a player or as a coach, the biggest way I can help a team win is my policy. That being said, I'm not light on myself in any way in terms of individual skill. So like for example, what I tell Jordan and Joe is like, if you want my slot, you have to, fight your way for it. I'm not gonna let you have it because I still want to play. That kind of thing. So it's not really humble. Like I do have my my own pride and stuff. But yeah, I'm not so uh I'm stubborn, but not to a degree that dampens my team from performing. Like I won't let my ego get in the way of like how much my team deserves this, that kind of thing.
It sounds like it sounds like Jordan and Joe have this all this rigorous training program to do, and at the very end of it, the final boss is you, and they have to just be better than you and beat you, and then they get to take your spot and become you. Does that sound about right?
I guess, yeah. But it's not gonna be easy though. Like if I just put all my time into like let's say I don't review VODs and I just T-hunt all day and play ranked all day. Oh, I don't think they can take the slot from me, man. I'm the best.
Yeah. I guess moving on to the next question. You sort of mentioned that a lot of that sort of, I guess, preparation coming into Tokoname and the APAC finals was done sort of by the team, and that I think you mentioned on Twitter, or maybe it was you, Dev, actually, that sort of gave a shout out and was like, get these guys some support staff, or a coach or something of that sort. I mean, is that something you guys are generally looking for? Coach support staff.
We are, but to be frank, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? So we didn't have the resources to hire a good coach. So I was talking to a few of them, and the salary that they requested was not something that we could cover. So that's on one end of the spectrum. On the other hand, we've tried several coaches who were willing to work with us for a lower salary or even no salary. But it wasn't really what I was looking for. Like I had a lot of trouble um in terms of their understanding of the game. I felt that like some of them were too analytical, some of them weren't analytical enough. Like they didn't really understand Siege the way we all thought that it should be played. Yeah. I'm not saying that we're right. It's just incompatible, I guess. They might move on to find a tier 1 team or whatever to coach for, but it just wasn't a good fit for us.
Mm.
So, yeah. So moving forward, hopefully if we have the resources, that we need, we'll definitely be looking for a coach or an analyst, or maybe even an IGL. Who knows? Then I can be the coach. So we have options.
And I guess if you were to give up your spot on the team, you'd need someone else to play the Montaigne as well, and IGL, as you mentioned. And like you talked about how the player would need to be better than you, but there's also like a lot of unique things that I think that they would have to fill as well.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's hard to anticipate what those details are because the way dynamics work in a team, you can't predict it, right? Um like if I wasn't around, it might not just be the shot calling or the Monty or whatever. It might just be the fact that like if I'm not there to help people talk to each other, then the team cannot function. That kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I guess that sort of segues into our final, culminates into our final dot point, and that is the Sixth Invitational, the next, no doubt, the next massive event on the horizon for Aerowolf. And I guess that I just want to ask, what sort of preparation going into this? You already talked about the players. Obviously, now with Mental leaving, it's looking to be that sort of fifth spot is going to be mixed between up to three people. I guess the question I have is, obviously you've had Tokoname, which has been your main international event, obviously aside the Allied Esports minor. I guess what have you learnt from Tokonami, and what will you be doing differently going into the Sixth Invitational, if anything?
Different. To be honest, I haven't really thought about it. I landed back in Singapore, and the only thing I've been thinking about was exams. But funny you should mention Sixth Invitation because I think just last night, we were doing a bit of goal setting, right? So, like obviously before Pat left, before Tokonami, I think I mentioned this on a tweet, but like our goal is to make the Sixth Invitational, and we're actually kind of ahead of schedule right now. So we had this discussion of what our new goal is gonna be at SI, considering that we might have one or two players who are playing at LAN for the first time, and the December to January period isn't really a conducive like training time because like the holiday seasons. But yeah, I think the overall goal for us is to at least make it to groups and make it to top four. So get out of groups is our expectation, and make it to top four is where we'll say we're happy with that. In terms of prep, I don't know. I guess I have to think about that after my finals, like how it's gonna change because we can't do what we've been doing in the past. Like we can't just focus on one team because it's gonna be a group stage, and I have no idea when the groups will be out. So I guess it's right now the priority is just to get the two new players as accustomed as possible to playing in a very intense environment. I guess, yeah, that's probably the primary goal.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair and realistic way to go about it. And I know that I certainly can't wait to see you guys um, alongside Wildcard and one other APAC representative competing at the Sixth Invitational in 2020. Nevertheless, we will be now moving on to our host picks. We've got Cthulhu up first. What have you picked this week, Cthulhu?
For me, it was pretty much a description of how people will probably initially feel about playing against the newer defender op. Womai and Macy J pretty much had it all nailed down. So just quickly take a look at the video, Dev, if you please.
So for those who didn't have audio just then, I've never heard a noise like that come out of a human being before Macy J.
Yeah, that would be quite terrifying. Like imagine you actually cooking up a nade, trying to throw it, and all of a sudden it just freezes right in front of you. Like, well, it's either two feelings. It's either just pure horror that Macy J had, or it's the sheer just acceptance. Like, well, I guess I'm gonna die now.
So Sky, your top pick this week?
Yeah, so my top pick for this week is actually going to be Sexy Cake winning the Esports Play of the Year at the Esports Award just or last night. It was yesterday in the day for us, and it would have been. It was in Texas at night. So yeah, really awesome stuff from Sexy Cake. We've got the play playing now. Obviously, this is a really notable moment versus Mocket, I believe it was. Mocket at the Sixth Invitational in 2019. And just incredible shotgun play. You actually can't hear the casters, but I can assure you it was a pretty incredible moment. And I actually remember watching it live, and it was very late at night, and yeah. It was it was loud. We'll say that it was loud for sure. Nevertheless, moving into Dev's host pick for this week. What have you got, mate?
So I didn't actually get to ask you, Glenn. I wanted to ask you earlier on, who do you think is going to win the whole event? So before I play this clip, I want to know, like, coming into Tokoname, and especially after day one, like, who did you think was going to be the eventual champion? Did you think it was going to be Na'Vi? Because I feel like that was an expectation that most people had.
I felt it was gonna be either Dark Zero or Giants, and it's not me being biased to my bracket. I just felt that they were probably gonna be the most prepared and they have a good ratio of being prepared and being like land experience. So probably Dark Zero had my pick.
Yeah, well, they actually made it to the final. They just didn't get it through, and I'm going to say Giants was my pick, so that's why I was super impressed by you guys when you made it through the first quarterfinal. Anyhow, my host pick is just the trophy winning moment after they'd won, when they're doing the trophy lifts, and it's really just hats off to the Japanese crowd. You mentioned how crazy the Japanese fans were. I've never seen a crowd do something like this. Every time they hold up the trophy, every time they get close to the trophy, the crowd starts to make an ooh sound, and then they just explode when he lifts it up. So I'm going to play this one. Yeah, the crowd was really something else. That I also noticed during some of the matches, between maps, when the players would leave the stage and go off backstage to do their thing. As the players walked back on stage, I remember this during the Na'Vi reciprocity match. Na'Vi walked back on stage, and Emzo's in the middle of doing his analysis thing with the TV screen, and the crowd just starts to clap really, really loudly, and they're just cheering Na'Vi for walking on the stage. Like, that's all they were doing, and they deserve cheers. So yeah, really hats off to this crowd. It was amazing, and I just hope that we see all the other regions, North America, Europe, even obviously the Brazilians don't need any more encouragement. Their crowd's pretty crazy. Just they want to look at this and they say, no, we can do better than that. I want to see Six Invitational even louder and even more hyped than this. And yeah, hopefully you'll be on the main stage as well, Glenn.
Hopefully, yeah.
Just got to win 2 games, bro. Just got to win 2 games. So that's all we've got for tonight. I'm just going to touch on some things coming up this weekend. If you are in Australia, you may be interested in jumping in some grassroots competitions. So if you're in Melbourne, there's actually a competition, a local LAN event happening this weekend in Melbourne, in the city, just near Melbourne Central. So really easy to get to if you come on the train. It's called the Recon Series. It's being run by a guy from the community called Hawk, who's been doing so much good stuff for ages. He's previously run events at the Zen Gaming Lounge, and this time online signups are open. I recommend you go over to the Discord where he's got set up, and there's online sign-up links you can find. If you don't have a full team, that's also fine, because you can just rock up and be put into teams as well. But it's good to sign up online, and you can win some stuff too. Now, if you're not in Melbourne, but you are in Hobart, there's also a pretty cool coaching session that's happening there with Raven, who formerly coached Oddity. Now he's focusing on casting. And there's a bit of a meet and greet and a coaching session at the Cooldown Esports Lounge. So if you're interested in Rainbow Six Esports and you are in Melbourne or Tassie, you pretty much have no excuse to not have plans this weekend. So yeah, definitely recommend going and heading out. And lastly, I just want to say, Glenn, thank you hugely for coming on tonight, because I wish we could talk longer, but we've been going for almost twice as long as what we'd allotted to go for, and it's mainly just because you have so many interesting things to say. So
sorry, I'm quite talkative.
No, that's good, bro. We would have stopped you if it was too much. Just want to say, man, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And that's about it for this week as well. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in. We're back every single Monday at 8 p.m. AE, Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Yes, we're on Daylight Time, so Sydney and Melbourne time. I was going to say AEST, but that was wrong. So jump in next week. We're going to be talking about Challenger League, because by next week we will have the teams from ANZ Challenger League that will be promoted to the Pro League. That will all be finalised. You can also watch those matches tomorrow night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night on this very channel. Tomorrow, tune in about 7 p.m. and we'll have all the action for you to see which two teams will get to Pro League. Anyhow, that's all we've got for tonight. So thank you very much for watching, and thanks again to Glenn for coming along, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.